Today we're going to be doing Old Testament archaeology, discussing the archaeological findings from the Old Testament. This over here is the black obelisk of Shalmaneser III. It is a black limestone Neo-Assyrian sculpture. The inscription identifies Jehu as the king who is bowing down and paying tribute. This over here is the Cyrus cylinder. It is a barrel-shaped artifact inscribed in the Babylonian cuneiform, dating to 539 BC, commissioned by the Persian king Cyrus the Great. It outlines his conquest of Babylon and is historically celebrated for proclaiming freedom of worship, the repatriation of the deported peoples. Over here, Israeli researchers discovered a 3,800-year-old scarlet red textile that was found in the Judean desert 2016. Textile was dyed using a tiny insect called Kermes vermillo, also known as the scarlet worm. Over here is the Azati Wada inscription. It is a bilingual inscription on stone slabs consisting of Phoenician and Libyan texts. Part of the inscription reads, "I built strong fortifications at all my borders where bad men and gang leaders are. I, Azati Wada, trod all people who do not obey the house of Mopsus. I destroyed the fortifications there. I built fortifications so that people of Ad and Wana can live in peace and comfort." The phrase compares the verse Deuteronomy 9:14. "Let me alone, so that I may destroy them and blot out their name from under heaven. I will make you into a nation stronger and more numerous than they." So here's the Urnamu Law Code. It is the oldest known, written about 300 years before Hammurabi's Law Code. Over here's the Epic of Athransis, contains a Mesopotamian account of the Great Flood and creation of mankind. It's created from a mixture of clay, spit, and blood. Rebellious gods were then to serve as manual laborers and relieve the lesser gods of their harsh agricultural work. Over here is the Gazer calendar. Next to it is the Mesha stele. And over here is the instruction of Amenefi. It is a literary work composed in ancient Egypt. It contains 30 chapters of advice for successful living. Over here is Kudarus. They were stones stored in temples as legal documents. They used cuneiform texts and divine symbols to guarantee property rights and ward off thieves. So here's Tarzans, the weather god and chief god of Luwian. So here's the mummy of Amenhotep I and Teldan scepter. Over here's the cylinder still depicting Meshuggah and America feeding the sacred herd. Over here's the Kam Ambo temple. Over here's the house of a hill toilet. The toilet is a structure that consists of a smooth carved limestone seat with a keel-shaped opening for defecation and a separate smaller hole for urination. Over here's the stepped altar of Megiddo. It's a circular Canaanite sacrificial altar located in the sacred temple complex Tel Megiddo in northern Israel. The book of Exodus makes references to sacrificial altars. Exodus 20:24-26. "Make an altar of the earth for me and sacrifice it on your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, your sheep and goats, your cattle. Wherever I cause my name to be honored, I will come and bless you. If you make an altar of stones for me, do not build it with dressed stones, for you will defile it if you use tool on it. And do not go up on my altar steps, or your private parts may be exposed." This is the Ahiram sarcophagus. Over here's the Arch of Titus project. Over here is our Old Testament Archaeology Part 4. This is an Egyptian hieroglyph showing beekeeping scene, showing man on knees worshiping with bee to produce honey in pots. In ancient times, Egyptians used honey for sweeteners and blowing a gift for the gods. Well, here's a 3,000-year-old pot of honey discovered in the Egyptian tomb. Next to their 3,000-year-old beehives found in Israel. After time, he returned the taker and turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. Behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. Over here is the silver scroll. This is a silver coin over here depicting two trumpets. Numbers makes a reference to two silver trumpets. Numbers 10, 1 through 2. The Lord said that Moses make two trumpets of hammered silver, used them for calling the community together, for having the camp set out. Over here are the standing stones at Gazer. This is over here is the tent of meeting. This is the Balaam inscription. It's a northwest Semitic inscription that contains a story relating to visions of Balaam. This is the desert of Zin, Numbers 27 through 14. The Lord said to Moses, go up this mountain in the Abiram range and see the land I have given the Israelites. After you have seen it, you will too be gathered to your people, as your brother Aaron was, for when the community rebelled at the waters in the desert of Zin. Over here's the harp player. Then we have a bronze figure riding a donkey. Shows figure riding a donkey similar to the Balaam story, Numbers 21 through 22. Balaam got up in the morning and saddled his donkey and went on to Moabite officials, but God was very angry when he went. An angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. It could foreshadow Jesus riding a donkey on Palm Sunday, Matthew 21 through 1-2. And when they drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage, to Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent forth two disciples, saying to them, proceed to the village before you. Immediately you will find the donkey having been tied, and the colt with her. Having untied them, bring them to me. Well, here's the Samson seal. And here's the Ensurly stele. And up here is Samsi, the queen of Arbus. Over here is Mount Nebo, the site where Moses was granted a view of the promised land before he died, was not allowed to enter. Over here is Beersheba. Over here is Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. Mount Gerizim is where the mountain where the Israelites are instructed by Moses to pronounce blessings upon first entering promised land. Mount Ebal is where Moses commanded the Israelites to erect large stones and inscribe the words of God's law upon them. And here's Beth Shemesh, historic valley. This is the gate chamber of Arad. These are over here, Iron Age houses at Shiloh. Over here is Kerith Jearim, cliffs of Boaz and Seneh. This is a ceramic pomegranate. The pomegranate of the Bible is a sign of divine abundance, fertility, righteousness, and the beauty of God's blessings. Over here is the Gihon Spring. This is the main source of water for the pool of Shalom and Jebus, and the later city of David, original site of Jerusalem. Over here is the Valley of Elah, where David killed Goliath. 1 Samuel 17:2, Saul and the Israelites assembled, encamped in the Valley of Elah, drew up their battle, meet the Philistine. This is the siege of Lachish panel. These are sling stones found at Lachish, where David killed Goliath. Over here is the Parthian frieze. And here's the balls of Mazzah. Mazzah was the Greeks' way of serving barley in a unique form, somewhere between porridge and bread. Over here's the threshing sledge. It's an ancient agricultural tool used to separate edible grain kernels from their husk and stalks. Method is popular throughout ancient Near East and Mediterranean. Over here is King Ashurbanipal. Panel shows King Ashurbanipal killing a random lion. Over here is shofar. They were used as similar to trumpets. Over here is the hyssop plant. It is featured in Psalms 51 through 7. Cleanse me of hyssop, I will be clean. Wash me, I will be whiter than snow. Calamus is one of the ingredients in the holy anointing oil. Exodus 30 through 23. Take the following fine spices, 50 shekels of liquid myrrh, half as much that is, 250 shekels of fragrant cinnamon, 250 shekels of frankincense. Well, here's the Shishak 1 inscription. Here's the broom bush in the desert. Elijah prayed under a broom bush in Kings. Over here is King Sennacherib besieged Lachish. Over here is the royal inscription of Sargon II of Assyria. This inscription is describing Sargon's conquest. Over here is the Hezekiah clay inscription. Hezekiah clay inscription is the first impression of an Israelite or Judean king ever found during scientific excavation. This is the royal seal of Hezekiah, king of Judah. Here's the stele of Esarhaddon. Over here is the Salome inscription. Over here is the Gedaliah seal impression. The seal discovered in Jerusalem, city of David. The artifact features Hebrew text inscribed in Paleo-Hebrew script, belonging to Gedaliah ben Pasher. Gedaliah is featured in Jeremiah chapter 43. Over here is the Samaria Ostraka. Over here is Beth Shean, location where the Philistines hung the bodies of King Saul and his sons on the city walls after defeating the Israelites on nearby Mount Gilboa. Here's the Assyrian king's list. Then there's Tiglath-Pileser III. Tiglath-Pileser III is the first king to rule as sovereign both Assyria and Babylonia. He led the Reubenites, Gadites, and half tribe of Manasseh into exile. Over here's the Babylon Chronicle. Over here is a Bronze Age loom. Book of Judges features a weighted loom similar to the picture on the side. Judges 16:13. Delilah said to Samson, "All this time you have been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied." He replied, "If you weave the 7 braids of my head on the fabric on the loom and tighten it with the pin, I will become as weak as any other man." So while he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids of his head and wove them to the fabric. Terracotta cylinder of King Debonus. Cylinder gives an account of repairs on the Temple of Sin by King Debonus. This is the figure of Asherah. She was a goddess of Northwest Semitic cultures associated with fertility, motherhood, sacred trees. Over here is a Gay, the place where David hid from Saul. Over here is a Qumran cistern. Over here is the Annals of Tiglath-Pileser III. He is the first king to rule sovereign, both Assyria and Babylonia. Over here is the Chara. This is the Beshatun inscription. This is the stele of Uja-Hornsnet. He was a chief physician, treasurer of the lower king of Egypt, commander of the king's fleet. This is Nash, the Rustam. Features the tombs of 4 kings mentioned in the Bible: Darius the Great, Xerxes, Artaxerxes, and Darius II. Over here is the broad wall. It was built by King Hezekiah to protect against Assyria. Broad wall is mentioned in Nehemiah 3:8. Next to them, Uzziel, son of Uriah, one of the goldsmiths, made repairs next to him. Hananiah, one of the performers, made repairs. They restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. Relief of shackled captives, so shackled captives being driven. Captured by Assyrians. This is the tomb of Nut. This is the seal of Menahat. This is the Assyrian cylinders. This is the ring of Theseus. He is a divine hero in Greek mythology, famous for slaying the Minotaur. These are Egyptian soldiers. They represent a rich military heritage spanning from ancient pharaohs to the modern Egyptian armed forces. This is Robinson's Arch, named after biblical scholar Edward Robinson, who identified the stones. The structure was built by King Herod the Great. This is the tomb of Nebamun. Nebamun was a middle-ranking official, scribe, and grain accountant during the period of the New Kingdom in ancient Egypt. This is the ivory plaque. Plaque depicts the triumphant Canaanite ruler returning from their battle in chariot. It's the plague of frog inscription. Depicts the plague of frogs in Exodus. This is the 4-horned altars. Over here is the Euphrates. It's the longest river in Western Asia. The Euphrates is named as one of the 4 rivers that flowed out of the Garden of Eden. This is the Carotid. 6 straight female figures that support the porch of maidens. Over here is Iana Shumadina. It was a gush. She was the governor in the Sealand dynasty of Babylon. It's the Papyrus of Ani, shows the wing of the hearts, with the heart on one side and the feather on the other side. This is Papyrus the Orbaney. Papyrus tells the story of 2 brothers, Anubis and Bada. Over here is the tale of Shenu Ashtakhan. Sinhu was an official serving the royal harem of the pharaoh Menahat. When the pharaohs assassinated Sinhu, but here's the word of the event, and overcome by irrational fears and flees into exile. There's the loyalist teaching of Kares Ostrakhan. Ostrakhan teaches virtues of loyalty to a ruling pharaoh, responsibilities one must maintain to society. Over here's the Mari King tablet. Over here the Thracians, your ancient Indo-European speaking people who inhabited the Balkans. Over here's the Roman merchant ship. Merchant ships were the logistical backbone of the Roman Empire. These vessels made the empire's vast trade networks possible, moving grain, marble, olive oil, and wine. Here's the Colosseum of Memnon. Here's the Gilgamesh epic, the historical king and Sumerian city-state of Uruk. It chronicles his journey with his companion Enkidu. Here's the Great Isaiah Scroll, one of the original 7 Dead Scrolls discovered. In Qumran. Well, here's the lettuce, beet swords, and the plowshares. Asked bronze granite sculpture created by Evgeny Ujitich, a gift to the United States by the USSR. Isaiah 2:4. He shall judge among the nations and shall reprove many peoples, they shall forge their swords into plowshares. We are tell the Jew gold hoards. This is the relief of mourning women, represents 3 mourners coming from a funeral procession. Here's Anubis, the ancient god of the dead, and mummification, and the afterlife. Over here is Miriam the prophet, daughter of Amram and Jochebed, and the oldest sister of Moses and Aaron. Over here is Cyrus the Great, portrait of prophet Jeremiah. This is the clay brick of Nebuchadnezzar. Over here is the gate Tel Dan. The gate allowed entrance into the inner city. This is Shiloh. Shiloh is where God made a dwelling for his name. This is Memphis, the city where Jeremiah warns Nebuchadnezzar's attack on Egypt. This is the Wailing Wall. The Wailing Wall is the last remaining wall of the Second Temple complex, which was destroyed by the Romans in 70. This is the funeral cortege from Saqqara's scene, traces of procession featuring female dancers and musicians using tambourines and clappers. Luxor Temple was the focal point of the annual Opet festival. The festival was done to symbolically renew the fertility of the land and the pharaoh's divine mandate. This is the altar of incense, used to burn aromatic resins and woods in temples or homes. This is the winged genie. It is to protect the spirit in ancient Egyptian Syrian art. Figures used to ward off evil, ensure fertility of the land, and the legitimacy of the king. Over here is the liver tablet, right, a model of a sheep's liver, probably used for instructing pupils. It's the Ishtar Gate. It was constructed in 575 BC by King Nebuchadnezzar, served as a monumental, spiritually significant entrance to the city. This is the Habakkuk commentary. It's one of the original 7 Dead Scrolls discovered in 1947. The scrolls contains the first 2 chapters of the biblical book Habakkuk. This is Tekoa, the most famous as the birthplace of the prophet Amos. This is Morsheth Gath, the hometown of the biblical prophet Micah. The flood tablet is the 11th tablet in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and Babylon count Noah's flood. Ancient Getty coins, a hoard of ancient silver coins found in Getty. We're here at Qumran caves at Qumran, known as the hiding place of the Dead Sea Scrolls. That is all for Old Testament archaeology.